Hi, everyone. My name is Camila Souza. I'm an Employer Partnership Manager at the Career Development Office here at SOM, the School of Management. Our mission at the CDO is to empower dynamic careers, and we do this with two teams. So we have the Employer Partnership Managers, which is me, and we identify partners interested in recruiting and developing MBAs. And then, so I work with technology, media, and entertainment. And our partners include companies and SOM alumni. And then we have our career coaches, and they work one-on-one with students to develop and see how they can pursue their career goals. So that's pretty much my team at the CDO. And now I actually want to welcome our panel of students. Guys, if you guys could introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you did before coming to SOM, and then talk a little bit about what you did for your internship while at SOM.
Sure. So hey everyone, my name is Eric Portillo, second year MBA. So before coming to SOM, I had studied computer science when I was in college, and then I did not go the software development route, but instead I was doing business analytics, so essentially analyzing data for a company called CarMax. For those unfamiliar with CarMax, they're the US largest used car retailer, about $17 billion in sales, based in Richmond, Virginia. So I got to rotate through 3 different teams, working on everything from their product, their car page online, to their loan servicing department, and also to their consumer insights team, where we dealt with a lot of the surveys. So for my internship here at SOM, this past summer I was in New York working for IBM, the International Business Machine, for those unfamiliar with them, and I was on their blockchain team, doing product management.
Thanks, Eric. Hey guys, my name is Kunal Jain. I'm a second year MBA as well. Before coming to SOM, I did mechanical engineering back in India. I started working for a consumer products company as a product manager for fragrances. Then I transitioned to an early stage startup to just see how technology is disrupting different industries. So I was working in a startup in the hospitality industry. We were trying to see how we can leverage technology and data to transition the entire fragmented industry back in India. Here at SOM, for my summer, I was interning as a product manager at Google. I was based out of California. I was working on the kids and families team. So it's a relatively new team which has just started at Google a few years back. Lots of interesting stuff happening about how can we make digital products safer for children in today's world.
Cool. Thanks, Kunal. Hi, everyone. I'm Nikita. I'm originally from India, and prior to SOM, I did electrical engineering and went in big data analytics, where I was actually working on huge amount of data sets and churning out insights for different business partners across the globe. Then I pivoted to consulting. I was working as a senior consultant in KPMG in their strategy and operations practice, which was quite an enriching experience in itself. Coming to school, I knew that I wanted to be in operations space and specifically in a tech company. And I would say that I was very fortunate to have spent my summer at Microsoft in finance operations. So basically, I was looking across 50 countries across the globe and trying to find out their operations strategy going forward for their hardware assets.
Thanks, Nikita. Hi, my name is Toma. I'm also a second-year MBA candidate, and before SOM, I had a major in international relations and business and pursued technical implementation consulting for over 4 years, doing applications management, business process, as well as organizational change management and effectiveness. Now, being at Yale SOM gave me the opportunity to gain a summer internship at Cisco as a PM in product strategy, looking at their strategic and business acceleration team in regards to enterprise agreements, as well as organizational efficiency across their operations.
Great, thank you guys. So I already have a question, and maybe for you guys who talked about a little bit about your engineering background, which is, how did it feel entering the Yale MBA program with a tech background, maybe as opposed to other students with finance or consulting? And this person has an engineering background, and they're curious to see how you're, like, I guess, the transition to the MBA here.
I can tackle maybe part of that question. So for me, I did have an engineering background, as in through computer science, but I wasn't exactly working in in the engineering capacity, because I had done like software development back when I was in college, but when I was actually working full time, I was more on the like business analytics, so I got to see a little bit of both sides, which is kind of why I've always been down this path of like I started with engineering, I wanted to transition to the business side, and this like part of that transition. So I think that part's helpful, just keeping the open mind where like you're gonna maybe not know everything, but it's also helpful to have the engineering background just because there's a lot of classes that have like technical components to it where being good with numbers is always valuable. And I feel like in any space that you would go into, having that is always a positive. So I mean, I didn't feel out of place with consultants or finance people. I was taking finance courses. Like last year I was in corporate finance and I did well in that class. And I think just having that engineering mindset and being logical in how you approach problems is super helpful.
Nikita, I see that you're, nodding. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I can speak a lot about it. So, like Eric, I went straight from engineering to more towards like big data analytics role, which gave me a good grounding of working with a lot of data sets and having some sort of business mindset even before coming to school. Though that was important, but what I would want to highlight is being an engineer really helps, especially when you're thinking about tech industry, because you can kind of relate and be empathetic with the engineers. So I think that that's a huge asset that you would bring anyone who's coming directly from engineering to SOM.
Great. So we have another question, which is, I am currently considering both consulting and tech in the short-term post-MBA. Is it possible to recruit in both industries? Have any of you guys, you've done like a dual recruiting here on campus?
I can take that up.
Yeah.
It is. I think I did. When I first started out. I was in similar shoes about thinking about. I knew, 5 years from now, I want to be in the tech industry in a product role. But the idea being, can I take the first few years targeting consulting and getting a wider range of experience, or should I dive directly into tech right after SOM? So that was the sort of mindset I had. In terms of how can you manage both, I think it's fairly. There is a lot on the plate, but if you're able to prioritize within consulting and within tech as well, what firms are you particularly passionate about? For example, if it's tech, are you looking for product experience, or are you looking for an operations experience? And then based on that, you can shortlist some firms rather than just having a large blanket. Mm-hmm. That can really help in managing both consulting and tech as well. And often, depending on what scale of tech are you targeting, the timelines can sometimes be a little different as well, which helps. Consulting starts a little early right in the fall, whereas tech starts to begin towards the end of fall and in the early spring.
Right.
That helps you to make sure that you can target both consulting and tech as well.
Yeah, and you touch a little bit about the recruiting timeline. And so, Diane, I know that you're the leader for the Tech Club this year, so one of the leaders for the Tech Club. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that question, but also about your experience when it comes to a little bit of both.
Yeah, for sure. So from the Tech Club perspective, we've seen that tech recruiting begins, as mentioned, in late fall, typically starting at end of October. So actually it's starting to ramp up for internships, whereas when you get into second year, full-time starts as soon as you get back. So I would say most likely beginning of September. I will note that tech companies seem to be pushing their recruiting deadlines earlier and earlier in order to capture the consulting talent. However, I have good news. Having been in consulting and done a lot of tech casing and recruiting, there's a lot of similarities, kind of like what Kunal mentioned. If you look at your function and you are able to prioritize, but even specifically when you're looking at, for instance, product management, the product casing that you do can be applicable in consulting and in tech. You just have to understand the nuances of what they're looking for in terms of frameworks, as well as for tech, understanding the industry a bit more in detail.
And I'd just like to add that there's also a lot of opportunities once you pick your internship as well, that a lot of times companies see this as an opportunity to kind of get to know you and see if they will offer you something a full-time after. So you'll come to school already with an offer, which is really, to your second year already, with a leg up in a way, right? So I guess a little bit about when you guys just go back to when you were in everyone in the audience's shoes, what do you wish you had asked, or either other students or the admissions team, but especially you guys, what do you wish you would have asked when you were considering applying to B schools?
So I can start us off. I think the MBA is ultimately what you make of it. And I think coming in, people have different optimizing points. So I think asking people what were they trying to get out of the MBA experience and did they feel like they were able to achieve that is very powerful and telling of what your classmates are trying to accomplish and if it aligns with your priorities. And another thing that I asked, but I wish I'd keyed into it a bit more, is what impact can you have? And I think ultimately that's what tipped my vote for Yale, is that since I've been here, I have been able to achieve the impact that I've wanted to in terms of not only the curriculum, but also the network and the clubs and really giving back to the community.
Absolutely. Anyone else kind of want to add a little bit about like what you wish you would have known?
Yeah, couple of things. So while I was in the admissions process, a lot of my questions were targeted towards the community part or the curriculum. I think I wish I would have reached out to a class who just graduated and talked a little bit more about their recruiting journey and how do they see themselves doing better in that journey. What that would have done for me was to find out, okay, what are the touch points throughout my time at SOM and outside, like just after graduation, that I can really use to make my career the way I want it to be.
Absolutely. So what one of the questions that we have here is, what clubs have you guys joined and kind of to get more, like develop more of certain skills, get a little bit more information about certain industries, but especially in the tech space?
So my path, I would say, is a little weird. The clubs that I joined last year, I was recruiting for banking, actually, so was not recruiting for tech, which is like a little weird because they're like not exactly that similar. So not necessarily related to like tech clubs, but in the finance club itself, I kind of came to the MBA with an open mind going like, okay, so I kind of how Kunal mentioned before, like longer term, I want to be in the PM space, maybe more in like a smaller company size feel. But in the short term, I was like, in order to get there, I want some finance knowledge because I really don't know anything about finance. So I joined the finance club, and through that process, I was like, okay, so maybe banking isn't for me. I kind of could feel like the culture wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be. So then that's why I ended up just going for tech recruiting eventually. But I feel like through that process, like I wouldn't have known otherwise. And even through that process, I got to learn a lot of the things that I wouldn't have otherwise known. I took finance courses just to kind of continue to add to that knowledge of where I felt like I had a gap, because I feel like overall it just helps build a broader foundation for me and just would be better long term.
I think in just addition to what Eric's saying, so when we look at tech clubs across business schools, Dinah is one of the leaders, and there is amazing stuff to do. But at Yale, what we've been very fortunate is that we can take up activities outside of SOM as well. So, for example, in the first year, I was working with the SciCity, which is the innovation center at Yale, which basically encompasses a bunch of students from SOM and from other different schools. Right. And we're focused on, on the tech space. We're either working with different startups within the tech space. And when you're working with students who are, undergraduate students from computer science, there's a master's in chemistry or something, and just the diverse opinions that come into play, I think that was something which was really helpful for me as I went into the entire recruiting process in tech. Yeah. Having had those diverse opinions really helped.
I mean, if you guys want to add.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely speak to it because I did an intensive at SciCity this fall. It was about building a prototype for a mobile app, so which was like quite an amazing experience. And then I was very actively involved in Tech Club. I think they do a phenomenal job of giving you opportunities. I'm actually doing the product casing team this time, so I can speak to that it's a very enriching experience even if you don't come from specifically that background.
And then from my perspective, I actually came into SOM knowing that I wanted to pursue tech full-time from consulting. And what I did first is I actually looked, as Kunal mentioned, across the different schools because Yale across different schools has hackathons. So I participated in a lot of different hackathons, tried to understand the diverse perspectives and opinions that go into innovation. And I've been in Tech Club for over 2 years. This is my second year in Tech Club. And I am also a startup club lead because I feel like there's synergies to enriching the entire ecosystem through established tech as well as alternative tech. And what's been really fascinating these last 2 years is seeing not only what we've been able to achieve in Tech Club, but also in pursuing our passions and how technology disrupts other industries. Like, for instance, we also have a fintech club, we have a data analytics club, and now we also have a child club, as they're called, which is digital health, which will be its own club next year. And so just understanding how tech facilitates the disruption of our society in different industries has been great. In terms of the Tri-City aspect, I'm actually part of an accelerator as I'm pursuing my own proof of concept around digital mental health and applications of it within the school system. So that has been really wonderful. As they tell you when you arrive here, Yale is yours. And if you really want to strive to achieve something or make an impact, you definitely have the opportunity.
And a little bit along the line of, you coming in, if admitted, what do you think are, there's so many resources, but is there something that students can do to make sure that they can maximize their probability of placed in like a certain region, so like SF, or if they're looking to stay in New York, how would you guys, what advice would you give? Or if you're still trying to tackle that, also, be honest.
So from the Tech Club perspective, what we try to do is we try to connect you to the alumni network as well as different companies through our Tech Treks, which is led by Tech Club, but encompasses over 8 different clubs in SOM, where we facilitate East Coast treks in the fall, since they're a bit more accessible. And then mid-January on, we do a huge West Coast trek that goes to California and looks at different companies across industries, not only tech. So you can talk to people there. We have alumni happy hours where alumni from even the 80s come and greet us and want to know more about what's happening in our community. So that's been a really great way.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things, just to say that, and please add anyone else, but I think SOM alumni, they're very engaged, especially in the tech space. They're very passionate about really bringing more students and giving them more opportunities and seeing how they can help, and I think that's very valuable, but yeah. I have one more question here is, this is a question that I'm sure you guys heard this before. How important is software development background for PM roles? Are the PM roles more business focused or tech focused? And we're not laughing, it's just because this is I think the #1 question that we get here when it comes to tech and PM opportunities. So anyone want to take a stab?
I can speak from my experience. Right. So on the team that I was on the blockchain platform team for IBM, and it's a pretty technical team. But even then, how IBM product managers work is that some companies, as a PM, you're at the intersection of design, engineering, and business all in one role. Yeah. IBM kind of separates the two. So the PM there is more on the business side, looking at go-to-market strategy, user research, and kind of typical business school things, whereas there's an engineering lead that kind of works with the designers and the engineering side. So they weren't joined together, how you might see in other PM roles. So for my team, half of us had, out of let's say roughly 8 to 10 people, half of us had a comp sci or engineering background, and the other half had a business or econ background. So you're going to see a mix of both, and as long as you're able to think logically and understand kind of just how technology works and understand the product, then you'll be successful, I think.
I think it was fairly different at Google for me.
Right.
As Eric mentioned, it's very variable from company to company, I would say. But I can speak a little bit more about how it works at Google. A product manager is expected to work at the intersection of engineers, designers, and business, and it's more leaning towards engineers and designers. But even then, as a product manager, you're not expected to code. If you can, that's great. But you're more importantly, you should be able to have a meaningful conversation with the engineers. That basically means you should be able to understand the logic of it, be able to write a pseudocode potentially, and be able to contribute to the entire conversation, because end of the day, you're owning the product and you would want to get the best out of it. So I would say having an engineering or a computer science degree is definitely a positive. Yeah. But even I had mechanical engineering, so I didn't do coding in my life ever. but I did work in a startup where I had the opportunity to work with engineers.
Yeah.
So that definitely helps because you're able to, relate to the work you've done in the past. So I would say that's a plus.
Yeah, no. Yes,
Sorry,
please
if I
add.
could also add, product manager, not only does product manager mean different things in different companies, but there's also different types of product manager. There's product marketing manager, there's product manager, there's technical product manager, and there's also product manager and strategy. So like for my work at Cisco, I looked at a lot of, similar to Eric, like competitive analysis, monetization models, looking at the product pipeline, and how do you bridge between engineering and the whole funnel in terms of the sales aspect. How do we make sure we're targeting the right consumers? So there's a lot of business elements in that. And I think one of the things, I mean, we do want to cater to established business, but one of the things that I've seen in my experience thus far, and you see in the industry, is it's very important to have diverse perspectives and to have, like, you should see your diverse perspective as an asset rather than worrying about how technical you are. Now, to that point, Yale does give you a lot of opportunities. I myself have been able to become more technical this past semester through the new classes that Yale offers in terms of understanding tech disruption, management of software development, and digital strategy in order to really be able to understand the business side of technology.
Yeah, that's a great segue to our next question, which, by the way, that was a great question. What courses best prepared you for your internship? And are there any electives you're currently taking that will be helpful, you think, for the tech space once you graduate?
Sure, I can definitely speak to that. So I'm actually taking CS50. It's a very well-known course, and it teaches you about, C, Python, SQL, so those kind of fundamental things, which are quite important to have a meaningful conversation with engineers and designers. Then I'm thinking of taking a machine learning course in spring. Apart from that, I'm involved in advanced software management, which teaches you about the methodology like Agile, etc., that you should be taking when you are managing a team which is moving really fast. So I think these courses kind of gave me a good foundation of and making me feel more confident in going forward and saying that, hey, this is what I mean when I'm talking to engineers or designers.
In terms of what prepared me to go into my internship, I think that the core did a really great job. I know I used a lot of, our core is based on perspectives and looking at cases from the perspectives of certain people. And for me, what was very important was the innovator and the competitor in terms of my competitive analysis and my specific projects. Similar to Nikita, I've taken a lot of extracurriculars, some that I've mentioned. I will mention that my favorite one is Big Data and Global Policy, which is done by the Jackson School of International Affairs, which talks about basically the ethics around big data and how do we utilize data in our society. So that's been a really interesting perspective.
And that's the technical, there's a perspective to the technical courses you can do. I try to speak from the other side. In any tech world, there is the technical side to it, but there's also the consumer side to it. And one course which I really enjoyed, and this I did in the spring last year, which was before my internship, I was working with the Yale Center for Customer Insights. And you can do a discovery project, which is essentially a semester-long project where you actually work with a company. So I was working with PepsiCo on a customer insights project. So what that really helps in that, it helps you understand the customer perspective to it. When you're just thinking about the consumer, how do you prioritize what the consumer believes are, what the consumer choices are, and how do you frame insights around that? So I think there are a bunch of courses, as Nikita and Diana talked about, from the technical side, like CS50, etc., which you can take up. But there's also the other side to it, the consumer side to it, which I think is equally important in the tech world, especially if you're looking at consumer tech like Googles and Amazons of the world, where I thought it was really helpful.
I'd say I'd agree with what everyone has said. And at the end of the day, what you'd have to decide is what could you take to make you more comfortable in a role such as PM? Because if you're in a role where I was in that you don't really need to have a strong computer science foundation, then maybe you'd feel comfortable without necessarily taking CS50, which I think is a good, I'm not in CS50 because I was computer science undergrad, but I do help people with their homework in that class, and I can tell that it's I can tell that it's a pretty cool course. But like if you don't think you need that to be comfortable, then maybe you take something else that may make you feel more. So if you want to know more about the customer, there's an elective that I took this past quarter called Marketing Strategy, which has been like my favorite course so far at SOM, and great professor here, Ji-Woon Shin, that teaches it. But you get to learn a lot about just how you think about companies and their competitive advantages, and why, like, even though everyone always thinks about, let's say, like the customer, the product, and all these other things, the main important thing is like the company and their specific resources and how they use that to their advantage. So like courses like that, I think will be helpful just long term in the tech space. So yeah, long story short, it's like whatever you think you would need to make you feel comfortable, you're going to be able to find it here. I mean, you can take classes not just at SOM, but electives like in undergrad, like Yale undergrad college. So there's always going to be options. I heard that there's like a graphic design course that I wish I would have signed up for.
Which
but,
one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the next question is, tell us more about your experience recruiting for internship and full-time experience, but focus a little bit more around like the career coaching support or any kind of like resources within the CDO that you got, or even from the clubs that you thought was very valuable.
Sure, I can get us started. So I'm someone who uses CDO a lot. So early on when I came to SOM, probably that's the first thing that I started doing, reaching out to different coaches in CDO. Though all of them are amazing, there are like few who are my go-to people. Like when I'm thinking about, having an important interview, this is the one person I need to go to build my strategy around it. This is the one person I need to kind of go for my cover letters. This is the one person I need to go to discuss about my negotiation with the company. So I think CDO is something that you would use throughout early on till the very end. Apart from that, making sure that you are reaching out to your peers as well as people from one class above you, because they have themselves gone through the process, so they can talk a lot more about the pitfalls, the things, the do's and don'ts. So these were some of the things that I was really piggybacking on while making my career at SOM.
All right. And just to say, just because I work at the CDO, there's so many resources online, and we start working with a lot of the students early in the summer once they are admitted to kind of like prep them before they get here. So it's pretty robust, the support.
And if I could add, Tech Club also works very closely with the CDO, and they've put on a lot of great programming in terms of helping you prepare for interviews. Such as we've had workshops with Luce Lin last year, and we've implemented a new online module that helps you prepare for product management interviews, as well as creating case teams, not only for Tech Club, but also for Marketing Club, if you're interested in that aspect. And Consulting Club also has that per the person who asked for tech and consulting. You can opt into a case team if you want to specify in one particular industry. And so that's been really helpful, and we always have companies on campus willing to do coffee chats, really talk about culture fit, what that function looks like. So there's a lot of support from CDO, the companies themselves, as well as our alumni.
And second years.
How
did you reconcile wanting to be in tech, but being so far away from Silicon Valley when it comes to location-wise? Which kind of goes back to that question where, like, how do you manage, wanting to be, to work in tech when tech is just so focused on the West Coast, right? And can you speak to the Yale brand in tech? Ooh, yeah, tricky.
So I think I'll get us started, and please feel free to add. In terms of being on the East Coast and when most of the tech happens on the West Coast, I'd say things are just virtual now.
Right.
I don't think even when I was on the West Coast during my internship at Google, half my meetings were virtual. Being in the West Coast itself, there were just teams on the other side of the building, and we would still just do a virtual meeting. So I think that's really helped. Like all my interviews for Google were just virtual interviews. So
Right.
I think that really helps. And New York increasingly is becoming a big center for tech. Most big tech firms now have a big office location based out of New York, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
And then even being here at Yale on the East Coast, I think in January, as Diana mentioned, we have like a great a week-long tech track on the West Coast where we visit a lot of big tech companies, etc. So that's one piece of how to reconcile the two differences. In terms of the Yale brand and tech, you would probably compare it to other schools, and probably it might be something which is relatively smaller. But at the pace which we are growing, our tech alumni base is pretty amazing. And because it's relatively small now, the support we're able to get is phenomenal. I remember for I think 2 days before my Google final rounds interview, I did a mock interview with an alum at 2 a.m. So he was available for me at 2 a.m., which I couldn't have imagined, he'll be like, let's do it now.
Right.
I think the amount of support you're able to get is amazing and unheard of for me.
Absolutely.
I think, so I actually come from the West Coast. I came from Silicon Valley to the Yale MBA. And one of the things that I will say is the network is key. Like, in terms of Yale, is providing you not only with an education and with like very tactical recruiting opportunities, but it's the people you know, it's the people that you meet here. Like Kunal was saying, it's the alumni who engage with you, but it's also people that come from the West Coast, from the East Coast, from abroad, who've worked in technology or have utilized technology in different industries. And so for me, the value of coming here was to plug into the network and to really promote the mission of state and society. And you see that throughout the people that are part of the SOM community here, as well as in the Bay Area, on the East Coast, internationally, is they look for utilizing the network as well as the perspective that we gain from what we learn in our 2 years here. In order to not only do the job, but really iterate on how do we disrupt the industry. It's not just about the first job, but it's about building your career and having that impact on society.
All right. We didn't really talk about the Yale brand, but I'll take a stab. But I think because of the students that come here because they come for our mission, it's just such a diverse background and diverse experiences. I think that a lot of the tech companies do appreciate that. I don't know if you guys would agree or have anything to add, but I think that's one of a big thing that I hear, especially when I work with our partners. They really enjoy the conversations and they enjoy talking to our students just because of they just come from so many different backgrounds, and I mean this professionally as well, culturally, but it's mostly professional experience that I think it sets us really apart. But I don't know if
I can add to that brand piece. So I was at Seattle over the summer, and because of the size that Yale has, you're actually valued more than you would think, because you are, one probably in the room of 10 who is from Yale. It's not like a West Coast school. So they are like, oh yes, you are going to bring something different than anyone else in the room. So I was actually given that sort of like added advantage, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the roles that students go into tech? Maybe besides PM. I know we talked a lot about PM, but maybe you guys can add a little bit of like what other experience, what kind of opportunities are there for students? Tech is everywhere, guys. So I'll just put that out there.
Does anyone want to do that?
Yeah.
Sure. So
Okay.
kind of going back, so within tech, there's different roles like finance, operation, also includes supply chain optimization. They also have rotational programs, like Amazon has the Retail Leadership Development Program, and the other tech companies also have rotational programs in order to accelerate your path to being an executive and gaining those diverse experiences. Those are a couple off the top of my head. But then outside of tech, you have ways to facilitate in fintech. You have education tech, you have med tech, and you see all these alternative ways of utilizing tech as well that I think come to the forefront more and more. And we see that in the number of clubs that are looking to tackle that, as well as in the industry. And I will also put up my startup entrepreneur hat and say that there's also a journey to entrepreneurship for people that maybe have gone into established tech and then decide to do their own thing. Or decide to incubate an idea here that is based on technology. And we've tried to facilitate that innovative culture through hackathons, that the first of which we put on a couple of weeks ago with Microsoft as a sponsor. that goes directly to our mission of state and societies working to help nonprofits. So there's not only different functions within technology, there's functions in alternative technology fields, as well as ways to give back through technology.
Great. What kind of opportunities at SOM and around Yale are there to learn more about specific technology like AI, big data, automation, et cetera? I think we kind of talked a little bit about, just because we have, when you come to SOM, you actually have access to the entire Yale. So I think there are a lot of opportunities, but do you guys have any kind of like specific experience? I know, Diana, that you talked a little bit about that, but do any of you guys have like specific things that you learned here that you had access to?
So I think this semester I'm working with the Office of Cooperative Research, which is across Yale, which are basically startups which are incubated at Yale by PhD students or professors at Yale. So I am working on a startup on network security, which is on firewall. So it's just been a couple of weeks that it started out. But basically we are trying to identify there is a product which the team's built, which is they're the folks who led the technical side of the product, and they've built out a product which they think is not available in the market today. And now we are trying to understand how it best fits into the business side of it and the customer side of it. So very specific and a very technical area of network security. And this is just the one startup I am working on. And there were about 10 other startups in very similar niche tech and tech fields and biomedical fields where PhD students and professors work on that. And then students from SOM come in to tackle more of the business side to it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to kind of take a step back from a little bit from like just a specific tech, but a little bit about your experiences here at SOM. So if you guys could share like some of your favorite things about SOM and just being here. Anything?
It's a broad question. So I'm trying to think,
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, New Haven pizza is amazing.
I'd say one of the biggest things that may be different from other schools is how everyone knows our mission and tries to push it forward. So our mission is to educate leaders for business and society, and how we've been doing that for decades, and how other schools are only now realizing the impact that society has. But here it literally permeates everywhere. Right. Like there was last year, one of my friends, he started a club called And Society, which is specifically to talk about how society, some of the things that we may not talk about in the classroom about society and the impact. So even just from things like that, you can tell that everyone's always thinking about it. It always comes up in conversation. So part of that is kind of what I really like about here. You get a lot of different perspectives, people coming from nonprofits. I did not come from nonprofits or anything, but it's useful to have that kind of perspective in class. And then adding to that would just be the collaborative nature that everyone has here. So one question, I can't remember what it was before, but it was like the Yale brand. And what I've heard is a lot of recruiters and other companies talk about how they like Yale MBAs because they're generally more collaborative than some other business schools might be. So they really try to get some of us in their companies. So a lot of that is what I would say.
And like anything else, like even like yesterday we had the day of like thanks, where everyone sent like really nice notes to each other. So I think it kind of goes into like that collaborative and like a nice atmosphere. But is there anything else that you guys would like to add about?
Sure. Actually many, but I would just pick a couple of those. Voices is something that is very particular to SOM, that some of your classmates or faculty would come and talk about their really personal experiences. There are definitely some norms around, sharing those conversations outside the room, but it's just so fascinating to see someone sharing anything which is vulnerable or so deep inside. So that's one of the things that I really love about this community. Second part is about closing bell, wherein like each one of us would come together on Thursday evening and have some drinks and talk about what's going on in our lives. It's a way to kind of make friends outside your cohort and just go out and talk to people about how stressed I am or how happy I am. So that's another thing. And third is learning teams. That is something which Yale does, and I think it's fantastic to have a group of 8 or 9 people with you early on when you're starting at Yale, and they stay with you throughout the first year. So you build really deep connections with those people people. I mean, like, we still go out. I'm so involved and invested in my learning team that we still go out and, talk to each other. So it has been a very transformative experience from that perspective.
And I'll just add on, because I agree with what everyone else has said, and I'll just summarize. I think the international experience was also wonderful, because not only are you able to connect with your SOM community through the activities mentioned previously, but you can also explore a new place with them with a different theme and really understand how they operate and kind of explore with them and really get their perspectives on what you both are discovering for the first time. I personally went to Israel for startups, and understanding how they promote innovation is great to not only see what's happening in that area, but also understand my colleagues and their experiences and their perceptions.
Great. So I think we're going to start wrapping up, and so I guess we'll go to like that final question. If each of you can just give us a last minute, like a tip on the MBA search, and also like the application process, if anything that you guys can add or you would have done differently, or you think that definitely worked.
I'll get us started.
Yeah.
I think when I was in that process about 2 years back, trying to identify, there are like a bunch of business schools, and all are equally great, but I think everybody has their own set of priorities. For me, I wanted to be in a place which is a small class size, because it ensures the community is really close-knit. People think New Haven's, do you want to be in a small town like New Haven? Because sometimes people think New York or Chicago is better. But I think being in a town like New Haven makes sure that I'm much more closer to the people around me. Yeah. I literally know each one of the 350 people in class, which I haven't heard across any business school. So my advice would be that try and have your priorities as to what are you trying to get out of the MBA, because every school has certain things which define that school. And if you're looking for, a highly collaborative nature, a small, close-knit society, and an impact towards the society which you can make, I think all of us would agree that we've had a great experience here. And it's been 2 years of complete transformation for me.
Anyone else have any tips for the application process, and even like deep breaths, it'll be fine.
I think for me, what was super helpful was talking to people who go there and talking to alumni, just whenever you can. And I think what I would have wanted to do more of is don't be afraid when you're creating your applications to vet them with the people closest to you. Because I know I was nervous, I don't want to burden the people closest to me, but you want your application to reflect who you are, because you want to get into a program that's a great, not only will help you evolve your career, but is a great cultural fit at the end of the day. So just involving those closest to you early on as you're writing the applications and getting their opinions, super helpful.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think we're almost out of time, and I just today we had the pleasure of talking to you guys, and we kind of really went into what is the tech space like, what is recruiting like here at SOM, a little bit more about the culture here at SOM as an MBA students, and everyone has a different path, and I think because the tech industry, even the recruiting process is, it's not black and white. It's when you get here, you'll really have the support to kind of figure it out, and I think that was really important, and I think that everybody kind of highlighted that. But yeah, I think, if anyone has anything else to add, I think we're, yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.